Hello there, we've not met yet. I'm Greg Gomez, here to present a special Igniting Change podcast. We're breaking the mold a little bit with a remix episode featuring some of our fellow Cubies. In these episodes, our incredibly talented team will dive into the latest in tech topics and industry news, from groundbreaking innovations in AI to the newest trends in app development and digital transformation. We're here to cut through the cyber noise, serve up a hot take, and keep you entertained along the way. Whether you're a tech enthusiast or just curious about what's shaping the future, these episodes are packed with insights that you won't want to miss. So sit back, stay curious, and let's ignite change together.
Hello, and welcome to another Fed and Bed Tom and Kev special podcast.
We're back by popular demand.
Back. You guys couldn't get enough of us, so we're doing another one. Just to reintroduce ourselves, my name's Kev. I'm a front-end developer at Three-Sided Cube, and we've got...
Me.
Hello there.
It's Tom. I'm the back-end team lead. You all know me from last time, but if this is your first time listening to me and Kev on the air, you're in for a treat. I'm back-end. That means APIs, JSON, frameworks, server-side rendering, all that kind of cool, brilliant server stuff, but without front-end, it would be nothing. So, Kev, tell them about the lovely bits you do for Cube.
And I'm just going to interject there, Thomas.
Kevin.
Before I get on to lovely Fed stuff, I've worn my jazzy shirt. If the eagle-eyed amongst you in the last podcast, which was about Fed and Bed rad energy, noticed I wasn't wearing my jazzy shirt, and today I have now got my jazzy shirt on. So yes, got my jazzy shirt.
Big fan.
Yes, excellent. So we're all ready to rock and roll. So yes, we are websites. We are chatting website stuff. We are talking about JavaScript, TypeScript, React, Angular, Vue, everything under the sun.
And I think the important thing is we do everything under the sun flawlessly. We don't really make mistakes. Nothing ever really goes wrong. In fact, I'd say probably we might be the best developers on the planet, probably.
Tom, might I say you build the best APIs?
Right back at you, Kev. Your front ends are robust, stunning, and completely usable.
Yep, never a bug. 100% pass rate with our QA team.
We don't even need a QA team. We're that good. We've binned off our QA team.
Yeah, in the bin.
And I think it's safe to say there's nothing that could ever... hold on.
Oh, the phone's ringing, Tom. We got a caller in on our podcast. First ever time.
This is weird. We're not even a call-in show.
This is very good. Ahoy, ahoy. Welcome to the Fed and Bed podcast.
Hi, Kev. Sorry to interrupt your podcast with Tom, where you're spouting lots of lies.
Oh, what?
Can't help but notice that you've just said that you're both flawless and that you've never made any mistakes. And just to be clear, we haven't binned off our QA team because we definitely need it, especially with you two around.
Hey!
Just as a few reminders.
Emotional damage.
God, Tom. Over the years that we have worked together, there's a few things that have come up that you might remember. So I'm just going to give you a few prompts, just things to, jog your memory. So if I was to talk about drafting in projects, if I was to talk about spiraling costs before a project even got off the ground, our reliance on third-party services and using them very, very badly sometimes, translations and content in spreadsheets that got wildly out of hand, Kevin. And Tom, I refuse to believe in your wilderness years that you didn't pull a single screw up, because that would be very out of character for you. So. But yeah, I just wanted to give you guys a bit of a nudge and just remind you that your performance reviews are tomorrow at 9 a.m. So that's well timed for you to remind me of all the things that you've screwed up in the past few years. So thanks, guys.
Okay. Bye. Oh dear, Tom. We might be having to assess some of these issues then, and see if we can come up with some learnings out the back of them in time for our performance reviews, 9 a.m.
I think
tomorrow
so.
morning.
It's flooding back to me now.
Let's do it. Let's do this. Okay. Right.
Who's kicking off? Are you kicking off or am I kicking off?
All right. I reckon you kick off first. You kick off first. Yep.
I'm going to immediately try and put the blame on someone else by bringing up a time that we messed up. Not necessarily technically. I think it was not so much a development problem as much as a product viability problem, a scoping out the market problem, a thinking forward problem.
Yeah.
Sorry, cut that bit. So I'd like to kick off with, hold on, we're going to find that time that a project instantly became unfeasible due to fees.
Get your wallet out.
Yeah. So this is an interesting one. This, as I've said, this isn't strictly a developer screw up, but we were developing a product related to calculating carbon offsetting, and it was actually a really neat pitch. The idea was fantastic. Everyone was on board. We did all of the developery, user stories, planning. All of those things happened that should have happened, and the project was in full flow. And from nowhere, it kind of ground to a halt because the product was based on collecting payments from users for carbon offsetting, which is an admirable cause, and I'm fully on board with it. The problem was that we didn't really do our homework, and I say we, that's the wider Cube and the client. We didn't really do our homework in terms of the costings associated with that. Technically, it was viable. Of course, you can capture payments on regular repeat. You can take payments as a user initiates certain calculations, and we could build those up and take those and so on and so forth. The problem was that the payment fees were so prohibitively expensive for small transactions. You don't really think about people spending less than maybe $5 on a credit card, but for some of the journeys people were doing, they amounted, the carbon offsetting on these journeys amounted to like less than £1 or 50, 60p or something. The payment processor we used, which was brilliant, by the way, had fantastic API, great documentation, would 100% use them again.
Zero bugs.
Zero bugs. It was zero. Maybe we can get sponsored by them if I dare say their name. But it was brilliant. But the problem was the minimum payment fees. There was a 50 cents, 50p minimum payment charge, which hit us because we would have to add 50p to every carbon offset, which wouldn't really make a lot of sense. That's how it felt because we were mid-build, and it was a really good app. We obviously I was on the back end stuff, so it was my role to help facilitate calculating the amounts and then actually taking the payment. But yeah, the users didn't want to foot a bill of plus 50p for every trip, and on top of that, it then got even worse because we were using a popular search engine who branched out into mapping provider. And we were using their API to calculate the fastest way from A to B because that's probably the route a user would take. Very logical. But again, the costs on that calculation was very expensive also, meaning that all in all, what would be a 10 or 15 pence carbon offsetting fee to the end user ended up being close to £1 every time because the user was paying Stripe fees and they were paying Google Maps lookup fees, and the actual amount of money that the app ended up with afterwards was not very. It wasn't a good return on income for the payment the user made. So that was a bit of a moment in the whole development process. But I think the important thing is we're not just today moaning about what went wrong. We're going to come up with some sort of learnings out the back of it. And so one of the learnings from this was learning, and one of the money related learnings for this one is I think it's really important to calculate your costs in terms of developer spend, external third party spend. Just because a product is technically viable doesn't mean it's financially viable. And actually we should have learned that, and I think we have. And we apply that to new projects.
There was definitely probably some communication barrier there as well, or mess up where doing that research early on would have enabled us to figure out a better UX pathway.
100%.
If we hadn't we could, instead of panicking last minute to try and find an alternative solution, that would kind of shoehorn it in to get the project finished.
Completely agree with that. Yeah, big time.
Yeah. Nice. Should we go on to our next one? Go on, Tom. Give me another fuck up. Let's do it.
Back to me for we can do some sort of.
Let's have some radical candor up in here, and be honest.
Radical candor.
Be honest with ourselves.
I'm completely honest. Now this was a good story. This one's got my first one was. Let me start again. My first one more time. Come on, Tom. My first one was very non-technical, but we're going to do a deep dive now into the technicalities of how I can technically fuck up projects, not just ruin them from a product market fit direction as well. So this one's a bit of a technical story. We're going to go all the way back to a marketing email solution that was authored. So the title of this one is "That Time Users Got Sent Hundreds of Emails Because the Sender Was Running on Top of Itself." Can we edit that out? I've given away the punchline. In the
Start again.
Yeah, we're in that is the punchline.
Yeah.
That time we messed up a marketing email piece of software.
Can I interject?
Of course, always. Please do, Kevin.
When you mean we, you mean the time that you left us and went to work for someone else.
It's in my wilderness years, yeah. Being a complete traitor.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, you may continue.
Yeah. I got kicked out of Cube. But I'm back now, so I can't have been that bad. So that time we, future Tom, messed up a marketing email solution. So cast your mind back to the heady days of everyone sending lots of newsletters all the time and emails going out. The place I was working at built their own solution for it. It was really cool. Can't fault it. I can fault it a little bit, but it was brilliant. It was a really good tool. However, on its maiden voyage, it didn't entirely work. It didn't entirely work brilliantly. There were some issues with the way it sent out emails. So much like most marketing email bits of software, you kind of have a template, you have a delivery list, and you send out a version of that email to everyone on the delivery list.
Sounds sensible.
Logical so far. The way it worked was through the web UI, you would upload your delivery list and your configure your template, you press go. What would happen then is it would loop over the list of recipients, and for each recipient, it would create a record in a table, in a database, saying, send to this person this email, and then it had a flag at the end. Has it been sent, yes or no? During development, it was tested. It picked up a few hundred emails, and this is the critical bit, the order of which it processed it in. It would pick up how many emails there were to be sent, maybe in batches of 10,000, whatever. There wasn't really a limit on it. There was quite a high limit, so it'd pick up as many as it could, send them all, and then go, cool, I sent those 100. I'm now going to mark those 100 as sent. Worked brilliantly for the first few test runs. We did a few test campaigns, and they went out brilliantly. However, on the first very large marketing email blast, it's called a blast back then.
It's a blast.
They're called e-blasts. This is a really old term from back then. I think it was email marketing broadcast, an e-blast or something.
There's got to be a sound effect for blast, right? What have we got? There you go. That'll do.
Well, that was me afterwards.
Sound effect found.
So we had tested it with hundreds of recipients, and when it came to nearly 20 or 30,000, the way it invoked was every minute the application would start up and go, how many emails there to be sent? Let me grab them all, send them all, and then mark them all as sent. And every minute it would pick up the next lot and go through on so on and so forth. The problem was that when we did very large numbers, it would take longer than 1 minute to process them. So it'd kind of be running on top of itself.
I see where we're going here.
Everyone's made this mistake once. So it'd pick up the first, the 10,000 emails to be sent, start processing through them, and then it wouldn't have finished them all. It would then, it might take 40 minutes to get through that thousands of emails. So then the next minute again, it would start again and pick up the same 10,000, same people, and send them all another email.
Oh no!
Yeah. So we got a phone call, and it was all a little bit. As we came to fruition, we sort of realised that's impossible. Of course we can't. None of them have been sent. Why have none of them been sent? And it had. So the person at the start of the list, I think we got a call maybe 40 minutes in, the person at the front of the list had got 40 emails, and it's sort of like it started triggering down. So the people at the front have got lots of emails, and the people at the end of the list have got no emails. And that was a bit of a tough one to swallow, because those of you who know about email marketing, once it's sent, you can't recall it. It's out there.
Can't undo it. And then
there's no Control Z.
And then the recipients like,
brother.
Yeah. Well, most of them were just take me off your mailing list straight away. I'm out.
Yeah.
Fair enough. We did accidentally spam them a bit. So that one, and of course, then you got the panic of SSHing into the server, immediately killing all of these processes, and trying to figure out roughly where it got to in the list, so you can kind of resume the the marketing blast and kind of get back to it a bit later. But that one wasn't a moment of triumph.
Nobody loves that panic either. Something's broken and we need to fix it, and then you're frantically typing away on a keyboard trying to understand what's going on.
Definitely. Well, this was back in the day when people had phones, and I think I had my own desk phone because I was a big, high-swinging, important, high-flying person.
This.
It was doing that a lot because people were going, "What's going on? Why is the client going crazy? Everyone's on their list is getting loads and loads of emails." So that was a tough learning.
Yeah.
Because it turns out that I'd say we're getting onto the positives now. The learnings from this, I'd say the learnings from this is that probably scale is an often overlooked part of a project. You can do really great software development. You can write really secure tests around it. You can sort of run through your flow with test data. But the reality is trying to test something at scale is a lot trickier to do. Of course, you've got big testing tools that can simulate thousands of HTTP requests. We could have stuck hundreds of thousands of rows in this outbox waiting to go, but we naively assumed that if it works for 100, it's going to work for 1,000. If it works for 1,000, it'll work for 100,000.
Yeah,
it didn't. So I would say consider scale, but I'm going to do a massive U-turn. Where's my record scratch?
Get your record scratch one.
So we're going to say, do consider scale for your projects, but don't immediately knee-jerk reaction to solving them, because I think there is a real tendency for software developers to over-engineer. And admittedly, in this case, we did need to over-engineer. Well, not over-engineer, we needed to solve the problem. But if you plan for scale from the get-go, I don't think you'll ever ship anything. And if you completely ignore it, you'll ship something that doesn't really work much beyond launch. So there's that sweet spot of, we've thought about it, we've planned for it, we've considered it, but we haven't necessarily dealt with the Google scale problems yet.
And like, I guess there's also an element of understanding like the real world in a way. Like as developers or testers, perhaps people might be very precise, or they might be very like rigid in their understanding of the problem. There's a really good example, and I'll see if I can find out if this is genuinely something that happened, but it was an example that was given to me when I was at university many moons ago about understanding how humans interact with computers. And the problem was when they first started developing, I think it was MRI machines. People,
as in medical MRI devices.
Yeah, and it was something to do with like the amount of radiation all these things give off. It was like a number the user had to input, right? And when they were testing it, they were like very specific in putting in the number. But what they didn't think about was someone who's just a normal person using a computer were like, they use the keyboard very quickly. So when they actually gave this thing away to be used, I think like the first instance of it like nearly killed someone because they put the number in too quickly, and there was like it must have been like some kind of race condition or something where the decimal place got put in the wrong place from the input from the keyboard. It was like a real world situation that they hadn't even thought about, someone actually just using a computer at normal speed. And it's very similar to your problem, where it's like they hadn't considered the sheer volume of emails being sent out in the real world. So I guess the other learning is just understanding how the thing's going to be used. Obviously not quite as life and death like an MRI machine, but still an important lesson. I'm sure.
Very well. It was important to the people who got the emails. It was important who we were sending them on behalf. But you're right, it wasn't life and death. No one died.
Yeah.
And actually, maybe we'd done some predictive load question marks. So I think that turned out to be the maiden voyage of that email marketing software. Turned out to be one of the bigger ones we did. So had we sat down and thought, what's it likely we're going to be sending? Maybe 100,000 tops. We could have done some estimations around, say, 150,000 to give ourselves some breathing room. But that we wouldn't have needed to over-engineer it to the million mark, but we could have made some estimates and gone, okay, cool, let's roughly simulate how it behaves at 150k, and we would have seen our problem straight away. For anyone who's technically minded listening, the solution we came up with in the end, and I should clarify, this was kind of before the days that things like Supervisor and PubSub queues and Redis queues, it was kind of before these were mainstream. These were still quite not young, but they weren't as prolific as they are now. So this was back in the day, a scheduler running it once a minute was kind of the way to do stuff. But in the end, it's very simple. We did two things. We firstly batched it so that it wouldn't pick up everything in the outbox. It would pick up the next 5K.
Mhm.
And not only would it only pick up those one at a time, it would mark them sent as it goes, so as it went. So rather than picking up 5,000, sending 5,000, marking 5,000 as sent, it would pick up 5,000, send one, mark one, send one, mark one. And then at any point, if it ran out through the 60-second, as it was approaching the minute running, it would know that it could abort, it would die, and the next minute it would pick up again, not running over itself, and then it would resume carrying on where it left off, because it was send one, mark one, send one, mark one. So that was the technical solution, how we solved that. Although if we were doing this today, of course, we would use a queue. That's a much better technical solution. But yeah, that's my
second fuck up of the day.
Yeah, it's coming back to me. I was sweating and panicking.
Yeah,
it's all very real for young Tom.
I love it.
Whilst I recover from my
Emotional damage.
I'm going to bounce back to you, Kev.
That's
Kev, hit
correct.
us with. Yes.
I've got another one.
Is that, should I have pressed the button?
Oh, sorry,
then?
I was going to push it, but I couldn't find it. I've got it.
This is shoddy podcasting. Right, here we go.
I've got
Another one.
There we go. We've got another one. And again, I guess it's kind of understanding how the thing's going to be used. So there is always like this weird overlap when it comes to things going wrong. There's usually something along the lines of communication, not understanding user requirements, blah, blah, blah. This is another one. So we had a very popular product we were working on, and there was basically a big form in it, right? And it was probably about 13, 15 steps long, a lot of questions.
That's a meaty form.
It's a meaty form, and could you imagine? And it was all quite technical stuff. The users were going to be inputting.
Kind of it feels like a survey at this point.
It basically is, and it probably probably would have taken about an hour if you knew all the answers just to fill it out. So it was split up obviously into steps, and the user could progress along it in their at their leisure. And we hadn't really discussed about what happens if the user needs to go away, or they get bored, or whatever. They just give up and want to come back to it. Yeah, and they want to come back to it later. And thinking about it now in hindsight, Kevin's like, that makes so much sense, that you need something like drafting with a form where the user can save that form but not fully submit it properly. So we basically got, this was a big project. I think it was 6 months in the making or something like that. A lot of developer burnout near the end. If you're a developer, you know what burnout feels like. You're just like, I'm ready to go into something else now. I'm ready just to do that. I want to go to bed. And it happens. And yeah, got near the end, and then the client was like, so yeah, you've done drafting on the forms, right? And we were like, whoa, we hadn't even talked about this. And then we were like, actually, yeah, that really makes sense. We really need that. And the last minute panic was not great because we had to shoehorn in this drafting feature, and I think the solution was to use I think Tom might remember this as well. This is before you left us. It was
Thanks for bringing that up. One more time. Just we could probably squeeze it in one more time before the podcast ends.
I'll see if I can.
Good.
Yeah, the solution was to store updates on the back end, but there was a lot of we had talked about on the front end how we were storing the data, and then back end had a completely different idea about how they were storing the data. And this was before we kind of adopted that fed and bed rad energy, and we've talked about it in the previous podcast, so pause here, go back to the other podcast, listen about that, and then come back. But basically we hadn't talked about what that kind of technical solution should be. So to get it to work, there was an awful lot of parsing on the front end to convert what the back end wanted into something on the front end, and when we were saving it, convert it back into the right format that the back end needed. And
Sounds tricky.
it was very messy, led to like a lot of, JavaScript files with like 500, 600 lines in, a lot of loops, a lot of if statements. And it wasn't ideal. It was a lot of panic, especially as we were right at the end, adding in extra technical debt whilst you've got burnt out developers. It wasn't pretty, and it inevitably led to the project being significantly delayed, costing more money, and I guess the learning out the back of that should have been, it was quite an obvious thing we should have anticipated.
A bit of a UI fumble there. Was that a UX fumble? Probably user experience fumble.
It's probably a bit of both. I think it's one of those terms. It's a catastrophic. It's like a catastrophic failure of the entire team to not pick that up. Basically,
that's true. How did no one recognise that? Maybe we're too close for it.
It should have been, it should have been something perhaps the client should have noticed earlier on, before they signed everything off. It should have been something we'd anticipated. We're building a big form here. Maybe let's give the user an option to save and carry on later. And then, the developers should have really anticipated that as well, because they've been filling out the form religiously in their development and gone, this is taking a while to fill out, isn't it? And so, it's definitely something we should have picked up on for sure. And now that's something that we definitely do. It's, we're working with end users, giving them prototypes to walk through that product. So, it could happen again with something completely irrelevant to forms. It might be something else. And, you need to kind of anticipate how the user is going to use something so you can, bake in the right features. And, something like drafting probably would have come out of that. If we had talked to an end user about this form, they would have gone, gee, this is a big form.
I'm not doing that in one sitting.
But we cleaned it up, we sorted that technical debt out as well, so that's good in the long term. But it did take us a while to get to it, to kind of figure it out in the end. But we could have figured it all out earlier on for sure.
I think that we make this gag last week. Days of developer time can save a few hours of project management time, or in this case, I guess user feedback.
100%.
We could have, if we'd only done a few hours of user experience testing with the designs, we could have figured out that no one was going to sit around for those enormous forms.
Exactly. I love it.
All right.
Excellent. Have you recovered from your previous one, Thomas?
I think so. I'm ready to admit, hold my hand up high. My name's Tom, and I'm a developer screw up. It's a safe space for my number 3. Number 3 was, it did hit me like a train. So I'm sure now, Kev, you're aware of this, but I don't think this one affected you, because I was at Cube, and you were probably sitting on the sidelines, quite glad you weren't involved in this project.
I feel like I know what you're going to say already.
Yeah, it's hitting me. The trauma's coming back. So this one is that time that we our project just stopped working for no reason.
Emotional damage.
It was really tough, because this one had me guessing for a long time, and I'll tell you what, it was outside of working hours as well. So we had a big project, and we delivered it, and then we had a huge Cube party, because no one else has a party like Cube.
Mm-hmm.
Cube parties are the best.
Yes.
Summer
party? Was it a summer party?
It was. I think it was summer party. It may have even been summer beach party.
Summer beach party. Yeah.
Which is the best.
Yes, and if you've ever seen a summer beach party, Kev and Tom down the beach, pew pew.
Yeah, that is accurate.
Sun's out, guns out, all the way.
Yeah. Well, sun's out, bugs out in this instance. So Cube Party was a rockin', and we got notified through one of our monitoring comm systems that one of our biggest projects had just stopped working for no reason. Unfortunately, I was the unlucky bugger who happened to have a laptop on him, so I got volunteered, and also I kind of knew the project. So I got volunteered to investigate it, of course, and there I was, sat in someone's car on the beachfront, trying to figure out why everything just ground to a halt. There was no logical reason for it, except the deeper I dug, it looked like, oh, that's weird. We're not getting any data in. So I should pause here and let everyone know that this project we were working on heavily relied on third-party data. we've relied on ingesting third-party data, processing it, applying some cube magic, and then piping it back out in various ways to lots of users. There was a bit of it was an interesting project because there was a bit of scale in there. We had to scrape data in and process it quickly and then pump it back out rapidly at scale. And then the application may sit there idle for the next hour or so until it gets the next bit of data in. But when it was sending out data, it was really pumping it out. It was hundreds of thousands of notifications in a few minutes. But we were getting feedback from our users that there was events happening, that our data, we should have scraped this, but they weren't getting any notifications from our app. It was not good. So the more we dug into it, it turns out this third-party supplier had just upped and turned off their API.
Oh, that's great. Thanks.
It was really helpful. Mid through one of the biggest events that this app handled, the third party had just gone, we're not supporting this API anymore, we're turning it off. And there was some rage-induced table flipping and laptop slamming.
I'm not surprised.
By yours truly.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out it was possibly a bit premature, my developer rage, because we thought they'd just turned off one of their data feeds / APIs for no reason. Turns out they weren't doing it for no reason. They had communicated about 6 months ago that this was going to happen. The problem was that we had inherited the project from another developer, and the API notifications were still going to them. So lo and behold, they were getting to a dead email address. The supplier was telling this version of the API is going to be turned off in 6 months. This version of the API is going to be turned off in 3 months. This version of the API is going to be turned off next week, and we were blissfully unaware, just consuming it. So when that landed, it was a rush job because we had less than an hour to rewrite our application to use their new API. They didn't just turn it off; they were replacing it with a new API. But doing that at about 7 p.m. on the beach after you've had a beer or two, with your feet dangling out the edge of someone's car, you're on 4G, probably 3G back then, 3G, tethered phone. That was not much fun. That was, admittedly, there's some shared blame there. We should have been, receiving these emails, or we should have migrated the account across and been aware of them. But also, we had no idea, and so
I feel absolutely terrible, Tom. There was me on the beach playing volleyball and just
probably wearing that shirt,
having the best time of my life, and you were there just like
crying and typing as fast as I could. But we're going to put a positive spin on this. What's the learnings from this? The first learning is make sure you monitor dead or old email addresses within your organization. That's a given. But actually, the more important thing is I think there's some work here to be done around risk planning and maybe disaster recovery kind of planning a bit around your applications. If you have an application that's heavily reliant or completely dependent upon a third-party API, you are tied to their success. If they go down, you go down too. And if you're relying on someone big like AWS or Twilio or some other huge Mapbox, great. It's incredibly unlikely that they're going to go down before you do. They're heavily resilient systems. So that's not a problem. This supplier was very specific in what they did. And so they kind of had the market sewn up because not everyone could get the data they could provide, but they weren't the biggest or the most professional organization. And we were heavily dependent on them. And maybe we'd never analyzed that or thought about that before. So there's a bit of a gag here. I don't know if this is a UK thing, but supplier rhymes with liar.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a, you got to be wary of your suppliers. With the best intentions, they may stitch you up a little bit, although admittedly, Cube definitely has to hold its hands up and say, we also were not aware that this was happening.
Yeah. And I think that's, and it's a thing that we do now, isn't it? We do a lot more kind of like risk analysis and like,
big time.
If we're consuming things or, we're doing things where there's always like a risk. It's like any health and safety nut will tell you, you got to have a risk assessment. And we do that for software as well. What's the risk? How do we mitigate from it? And you've got to keep updating that as well. So doing things like checking documentation, checking if there's any updates coming through for a third party, keeping an eye on their comms, that kind of stuff is so important to mitigating that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But also going back to my first screw up, which is that, my second.
Yeah.
We can edit that bit out. Going back to my second point, just because you've analysed your software and you found that there's a risk, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to solve it there and then. Being aware of that risk and managing it within reason, and technically, for example, there's a risk that Gmail could go down if your company relies on it, but the reality is that's pretty unlikely. And if Gmail goes down for you, it's going to go down for a lot of other people as well. So maybe that one's not one to deal with, but relying on an obscure third party for your entire application, bingo, that's a big old risk, and we should have mitigated for it.
Yeah, and like part of the mitigation could just be like handling it gracefully.
Yeah, or maybe we should have set up some monitoring to monitor their API for them, so that we get hit with all sorts of screaming phone calls from automated systems when as soon as that disappears. So yeah, that was not my favorite beach day, but the beginning of it was all right and the end was all right. It's the middle bit where I was panicking and trying to fix it. That was less than ideal, but we had a royal big session afterwards to make up for that. Stress Tom really took the edge off afterwards.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised in the slightest.
Right, Kevin, back to you for our we always celebrations afterwards, no doubt. Right, back to you, Kevy B, for our third and final,
and probably one of the most frustrating fuck ups from.
Oh, really? Okay.
It was frustrating. It wasn't like cataclysmic in the sense of an impact. It did draw out a project. It was another project that had been going on for a long time. It is another one where we'd all been suffering from burnout, like the entire team. And this was back in the day, like before Tom, way before Tom.
Before me?
Yeah,
okay.
I think we were still using like Post-it notes on a board to do project management. So this was.
It's still going. That one's way too long. Sorry, stop.
World's longest sound effect. I love it. But actually saying that, there's something quite satisfying about having a Post-it note for a ticket, and you just go beep beep. You can like physically move it up. You get that little dopamine hit by moving it. And
that was the original Toyota Kanban system, wasn't it?
And everybody gets to watch you do it as well, and that's nice. If you've got an ego,
the sales ringing the bell, that's the equivalent for us.
Yeah, if you've got an ego that needs tickling occasionally, then that's perfect.
I think we all do.
But no, we use Jira now anyway, so we're not using that kind of crazy. We're not using that kind of crazy system anymore. But anyway, that's not the point. I've completely gone off on a tangent.
I've
digressed. But this project had been going on. I think it was even longer than my previous one. I think it might have been going on for about 8 months. It was a big project, and it was without ditching any client in it. It was a project that managed content and served it through an API for developers to use. And we built basically a content management system before there was anything quite popular, very specific. We'd built something to fulfill the purpose, because your contentfuls and your story blocks and your other kind of more headless CMSs didn't really exist back then. So we thought, we'll build it.
Oh, is this in the category of headless CMS rather than, because I guess back then there were things like WordPress, but that wasn't really fit for
purpose. So
okay, so this is a headless CMS, the arena we're in.
Sure thing.
Cube pioneering then. This counts as Cube being pioneers in the headless CMS space.
Absolutely. And so we had basically built a really nice management system for the end client to go and update and manage their content, and most crucially, import content into the system at a large scale, basically. So it might be like thousands of rows of like strings, basically, that needed to go into this system, and it all needs to be translated. So we were like, right, okay, we don't want either ourselves or the clients have to sit there and input all this data, because there was an awful lot of it, and we were like, absolutely not. Nobody's got the time for that.
You didn't want a huge multi-stage form.
Exactly, yeah. Well, the technology exists, so we were like, right, okay. The simple solution was we built a way for the user to export a CSV file that was in a specific format that they then filled out. They sent it away to get all the copy translated, and then give it back to us, and then we can import that. Boom. Or they could have imported it themselves as well.
Nice, easy peasy,
perfect. And we were like, "This is great." So we gave them. I think they might have actually even downloaded the CSV themselves. Started filling it out. Went away for months. Came back with it. here's the spreadsheet in Google Docs, and we're like, oh, that's weird, it's in Google Docs, it was a CSV file, but no worries. And you go in there, and it's basically a completely new spreadsheet in the format we didn't need or didn't require it.
Oh, they're taking it and adapted
They're
it.
taking it and adapted it, and they were very insistent in the fact that they wanted to color code each thing to make it easier for the people translating it, and that caused a big problem, because there were thousands of rows in this document. And they were like, yeah, we can't seem to upload it in the tool that you built. And we're like, yeah, no wonder, because we gave it to you in a specific format that needed to stay in that specific format. But now you've changed that format, and you've done weird things like color coding, and it wasn't a replicatable format. They'd done things differently for each kind of thing. Colors were mildly different because they'd used a color picker and not like the same color each time, so we couldn't even like discern what each color kind of meant, apart from just manually looking at this spreadsheet.
Oh man, that sounds terrible.
So the only option we had was to sit there and manually input the data using this new content management system we'd built, a single row at a time, and it took a very long time to do. We're talking, most of the week just working until like 1 a.m. just inputting content, and it was hell on earth for a little bit.
All because the client didn't want to use the format of
the client didn't use the format. But I wouldn't necessarily blame it on the client as well. I would also blame it on us for not really expressing it has to stay in this format. Otherwise, we're going to have a bad time. So that's basically the learning from it, is that explaining the reason why we've given it to them in a specific format is so we can upload it without having to spend a load of person hours, would save us a load of time and money, and then just make it importable. So that's basically it. It went on for so long. We also kind of talked about, should we have used a spreadsheet as a content source? Because, you give it away, it disappears into the ether for a bit and then comes back, and, goodness knows what's happened to that spreadsheet.
True.
Maybe
Google Sheets could be a cool solution to that.
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
Because you can API into Google Sheets and extract stuff.
You can, yeah. But there's other ways of forcing like a template. You could do things such as, is it Monday.com? You can do like a bit more kind of advanced spreadsheet stuff, but keep it in a specific format and things like that. So it's kind of best of both worlds. The client likes the spreadsheet, and we get to be able to interpret it as a database, data source kind of thing, and import it. So there's much more better solutions now. But back in the day, that was a tough one, and it did take us a very long time. I think it is about a month of work just to import this stuff, and fun times.
Wow.
So that was our final and last fuck up.
It is.
How are you feeling, Tom?
Traumatized, reliving all these mistakes I've made.
Are you ready for our performance review tomorrow at 9 a.m. is the question.
I might not show up. I don't think. If Sophie's listening to this, we might not stand a chance.
I feel like we've got some learnings out the back of it, and I feel like each of these things are kind of different things, and out the back of it, we've learned from failure, and I think that is the most important thing, especially in our line of business. Learning when you make mistakes is admitting those mistakes first of all, going, we mucked up, but we found a solution in the end, and we're not going to repeat that again because we've been through the trauma of it.
Yeah, we've learned, we've evolved, we're pivoting to a better solution. And I should say, I was being a bit tongue-in-cheek there. Of course, Cube's approach to problem solving is very good, and Kev's right. We adapt and we learn, and we never make the same mistake twice. And not only that, but Cube has obviously saved the day thousands of times with near misses that we've helped clients avoid. So these might be our most entertaining mess ups, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of superhero moments that Cube can't ever talk about it. It's locked down.
Yeah.
Secret squirrel stuff.
Yeah. But you know, we're doing some really exciting stuff, and we've got such an amazing team that helping us avoid those, you know, those catastrophic issues.
There'd be so many more. If it wasn't for the
Yeah.
Cube gang, we would be
Yeah.
inundated with problems.
Yeah.
But I guess software at the end of the day is a people
Exactly.
business. It's not although it kind of is computery too. There's some computers involved,
You need a computer at some point, don't you?
but it is humans will determine the success of software, not computers. I feel this is quite a wholesome
I
ending.
love it. Oh my gosh, it's so cute. Well, I mean, I don't know about you, Tom, but I know this is our second one, but I'm sure we've got more in us. We must have more podcasts in us.
Definitely.
So definitely subscribe to your podcast platform.
And like
if you can. Can you like on Spotify? I guess you can. You definitely like on YouTube.
Just tell your friends.
Yeah.
Spread the good word of Kev and Tom.
Yeah. So we'll definitely do some more if you guys want some more.
Yeah, this is Rocky 2. We've done Rocky 1,
Yeah.
smash. Rocky 2, brilliant. Rocky 3, Mr. T, is that where we're coming in for? Or is it the Russian guy?
I can't remember, if I'm honest.
I think next one we should do the whole episode in boxing gloves.
Right. Yeah, okay, that sounds good.
What could go wrong?
Quick, I need to pause. I can't do it.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be able to use our sound effects. We'd have to use our nose.
Oh, yeah. Should we do...
Oh, no. Is that a long one?
Oh, that is the long one. Should we do some... should we do an exit? I feel last time we did an exit song. We should do an exit song.
Let's do an exit song. Let's do it. Rock and roll. DJ Tom in the house. Let's go.
You've been listening to Kev and Tom on Cube's Igniting Change podcast. Tune in next week.
Well, hey.